Welcome to this Laowa macro masterclass. Today we're gonna talk about abstract macro photography, which is one of my favorite things to do with a macro lens. You're gonna learn how to take photos like these, and I'm gonna give you 11 ideas and tips to get you inspired to try abstract macro photography yourself. My name is Micael Widell. I'm a Swedish macro photographer and YouTuber. I've been making videos about macro photography on YouTube now for 6 years, and I'm very honored to be invited by Laowa to do this video, and I'm so excited about the subject that we chose together because I really love abstract macro photography. It's perfect in the winter when you cannot find any insects to photograph, or even in the summer when you just feel like doing something different, something where there are no rules at all. You don't have any rules to follow in terms of composition or subject matter or whatever. You can just experiment freely, and that, I think, is what makes abstract macro photography so much fun. I have divided this video into 11 parts to make it more easy for you to digest. Each part is an idea or a technique or a subject for abstract macro photography. So, let's get into it. Idea number 1: flowers. Here are some examples that I've taken recently. I like this photo, for example. I think it's not really apparent that this is a part of a flower, but you can see the pollen there, and yeah, it's just a nice photo with a lot of blurred out background, but also a bit of detail. And here is another variant of this. And I think there are two ways to go about abstract flower photography. Either you could use a flash and a diffuser, as I often do. Then you can get away with a smaller aperture. You can get some more depth of field that way. Usually I shoot at maybe f8 or f11, and I shoot at a shutter speed of 1/200th of a second and an ISO between 100 and 200. And then you can take photos that look like these, and I think it looks really nice. But you can also do this without a flash. Then you probably need to set a bit of a wider aperture, maybe f4 or something like that, and maybe you need to bump up the ISO to like 400 or even 800. And I suggest you always have a shutter speed of at least 1/200th of a second if you're doing freehand macro photography without a flash to get the shot stable enough. And then you can take photos that look like these. And I really love this kind of photography where you just use natural light and you use a wide aperture, so a lot of the photo is just blur, but it still looks beautiful and interesting and abstract. If I'm not using a flash, I prefer to do this on an overcast day because then I get more even light and it will look nicer in the photos. If the sun is shining, I always try to block it with my body or with my camera because shooting macro in direct sunlight is very hard to get good results that way. You should have a more even light either from a flash with a diffuser or from a cloudy overcast sky. Idea number 2. Faucet. This is a really fun experiment that I did a couple of years ago. You simply just turn on your faucet at home. You have an external flash of some sort, and I simply bounce the water off an egg cup or a spoon, and you can get really interesting patterns and you can freeze them all using a flash. And try to bounce the flash off some white surface to get a softer light. And then when you have a strong flash like this that is external, you don't need a super fast shutter speed. The flash will freeze the action. Here is some examples. I simply just had the water turned on and I let the water bounce in an egg cup to kind of let it fly upwards. And as you can see, you can get some really cool photos when a flash can freeze the action. I used a shutter speed of 1/200th of a second, I use an ISO of 100 here, and an aperture of f8. And I used a Laowa lens, of course. Most of the photos in this video are taken with one of the popular Laowa lenses that go to 2x magnification. They are perfect for this kind of photography. And you can also use a slower shutter speed if you want to, and then you get effects like these. And this, if you ask me, is really excellent abstract macro photography. It's hard to see exactly what it is, but it looks kind of cool and kind of beautiful, right? Idea number 3. Leaves. This is such a perfect subject for abstract photography. These I just shot in my windows at home, different plants, and you can use a wide aperture like f4 and then just ISO 400 or 800 and a shutter speed of maybe 1/200th of a second. And yeah, just try to get the edges of the leaves in focus and sharp. That tends to look interesting, and then just try to find interesting angles. Another tip is when you're out on a sunny day and you see some leaves hanging from trees, try to shoot them when the sun is shining through them, and you can get some really interesting patterns, as you can see here. Idea number 4. Boiling water. One subject that I return to again and again and again is water in all its forms. And one cool idea that you can try is to boil water and try to photograph it while it is boiling. As you can see, it looks very interesting with this kind of almost like molten metal feel to it. If you do this, you need to freeze the action somehow, and the best way to do this is to use a flash. Either you have a flash on your camera with a diffuser, or even better if you have a flash that is external, a wireless flash that is standing with some kind of diffuser. The very best way to photograph boiling water is if you have a glass tea kettle like this one. As you can see here, I just point the flash inwards from the side and then just shoot away. And as always, when shooting with a flash, use a small aperture, maybe f8 or f11, use a low ISO, maybe 100 or 200, and use a shutter speed of around 1/200th of a second, and you will get results that look like these. Idea number 5. ICM. ICM stands for intentional camera movement, and when doing abstract photography, this is a very important technique to try, I think. You can do it both on short distances. Here I just did it in the forest with the picture slightly out of focus while moving the camera. Here I moved it more in like circles. Of course, you don't need to do this at short macro distances. Here I did it on a longer distance with a Laowa macro lens. And as you can see, it looks really cool, and the more you move the camera, the more abstract it will look. So you kind of have to find a balance there that feels right to you. A lot of fun to experiment with this. A tip here is to set the shutter speed to 1 or 2 seconds, and also try to keep the camera steady for like half of that time and then move it towards the end. That way you get a good balance between details in your photo, but also this swirly abstract lines that go everywhere. Idea number 6. Beer. Buy a bottle of beer or some kind of soda. As long as it is colored and has bubbles in it, it can be a great subject for abstract macro photography. These shots I took with a Laowa 25mm lens, and I used the same technique as with the boiling water. I have an external flash from the back side or from the side of the photo, and then I just try to find interesting angles, and I use a high magnification of maybe 3 times or 2 times to get the bubbles really big. And it's a lot of fun to experiment with such a simple thing as a beer bottle, and as you can see, you get very interesting photos, and if you change the colors up a bit, they almost look like they come from a science fiction movie or something. Idea number 7. Raindrops. This is one of my favorite things to do with a macro lens. If it has just been raining for a while, or if it is even still raining, you can go outside and try to snap some photos of raindrops that are hanging from trees and branches. And as you can see, they look beautiful and mysterious and very interesting. A tip here is to try to get the light shining from the backside towards you through the raindrop. That tends to get the most beautiful results. You can use a flash. In that case, I recommend you to use an external flash with some kind of diffuser on it and shine it from the backside of the water drop. But if it is a bit sunny, you can also just use natural light. Another tip is to try to get the edge of the drop sharp and in focus, and then you very often will get a very interesting and beautiful result. Idea number 8. Out of focus. Who says that photos need to be sharp all the time? Definitely not in abstract photography at least. Experiment by focusing very closely while shooting at something that is a bit further away, and you can get very interesting and pleasing results. For example, this photo that I shot off my computer screen, I simply just focused closer than the screen was, and you get this very beautiful color pattern. Or even outdoors in nature, you don't even need a macro lens for this, of course, even if you can get maybe the best results with a macro lens. Just focus closely and point your camera at something interesting with interesting colors, and you can get these very beautiful abstract landscape photos. I really love this, and it's a lot of fun to experiment with how different subjects will look out of focus. This is a great thing to do with a manual Laowa lens. Just turn the focusing ring until you think it looks good, when you have the right amount of out of focus blurriness, and then just snap the photo when the blur is right and when you have an interesting composition. I think you get the best results when you need to use some of your imagination to see what the subject really is, when it is like almost possible to see it but not really. I think those photos come out the best. Idea number 9, black and white. Black and white, I think, is a great thing to use in abstract macro photography. Especially if you're shooting something that you think is interesting or beautiful, but it doesn't look that beautiful when you inspect it in the camera, and maybe the colors are not that beautiful, they are a bit washed out, or you don't like them simply. Try turning the picture into a black and white picture, or even try setting a black and white setting in your camera already, and you will notice that immediately many of your photos will look a lot more artsy and interesting. And black and white can really help in abstract macro photography because it will remove some of the information in the photo when you remove the colors, and then it might be harder to see what the subject really is, and that makes the photo in many cases more interesting. Idea number 10, berries and plants. If you don't know what to shoot and you need to find an interesting subject, one thing I love to do is just to go out in the forest and just point your camera at random berries or figs or branches, like random things that are sticking out. And you can combine this with my last tip of black and white, and you can get some really interesting photos. It's hard to see exactly what this is, but I like the look of it. It looks interesting and abstract and artsy, don't you agree? And can you imagine what this is? I've lit it with a flash from behind, or like slightly from below, a flash with a bulb diffuser on it. And actually this is a blueberry in development that I found in the forest, and I shot it with a Laowa 25mm macro lens. There are so many interesting shapes and patterns that you can find in a forest, and it's a lot of fun to just experiment with these and try to keep a small part of it in focus and then the rest of it out of focus. And I really love this look when you have just a small part of your subject in focus, and then you let the rest of it just melt into the background. And you get this effect if you're shooting at a wide aperture, you're focusing closely, and you shoot something that's sticking out towards you, like a branch or a fig or something, or a berry that's hanging on a branch or a fig. And you can also make this effect even stronger by making the photo black and white. Idea number 11, coffee. It's kind of hard to see what this is, right? I mean, I just told you what it is, but if I didn't do that, it would be hard for you to guess, I think. If you just have a regular cup of coffee and you take photos of it with a flash, using the settings that I've suggested in this video to use with a flash, a fast shutter speed of 1/200th of a second, and an ISO that is low, like 100 or 200, and an aperture of f8 or f11. Those are great settings to combine with a flash. Set the flash in manual mode and set the strength of like 1/16th or something, and use a diffuser, some kind of white material in front of your flash. And as you can see, just a regular cup of coffee can look very interesting if you take a photo straight from above. This photo was taken with the Laowa 65mm macro lens. My goal with this video was to get you inspired, give you a couple of ideas that you would like to try. So I really hope that you will try these, And thank you so much, Laowa, for letting me do this video. It was a lot of fun. I love abstract macro photography myself. And if you want to see more of that, head over to my YouTube channel and check out some of my videos. Many of the subjects in this video I've made long videos about with more in detail explanations. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.